My name is Carlos Vieira, and I've spent 2 decades telling other people's truths for a living. But I wasn't prepared for the truth that lived under the Marlowe mansion, quiet as dust, heavy as stone, and locked behind a door no one was supposed to remember. Before I tell you what we found in that hidden cellar, I need you to see the house the way I saw it the first time, not as a building, but as a grieving body that still breathed. The Marlowe mansion sat on a hill like a private kingdom, all iron gates and winter-bright hedges, the kind of estate that makes you lower your voice before you even step inside. The driveway curved past a reflecting pool that caught the sky like a mirror, past a glass conservatory where orchids bloomed year-round, past a garden with white roses arranged like a wedding that never ended. It smelled like wet stone and cedar. The air had that particular hush of places where money can buy silence. Ethan Marlowe, self-made billionaire, headline favorite, charitable titan, opened the front door himself that morning, barefoot on imported marble, wearing a sweater that had seen too many sleepless nights. His eyes were the color of tired storms. He didn't look like a man who had everything. He looked like a man who had lost the only thing that mattered. "Carlos," he said, and his voice made my name sound like a confession. "Thank you for coming." I'd known Ethan in the way journalists know powerful men, through public statements, curated interviews, the soft choreography of wealth. But I was here now because a woman named Rosa Alvarez had called my office 2 nights earlier, whispering like someone could hear her through walls. "I'm the new housekeeper," she'd said. "I found something. And if I'm right, those boys aren't safe. Not from the world, but from the people who say they're protecting them." Rosa was standing behind Ethan now, hands clasped at her apron, her posture trying to be invisible. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back tight, like she didn't have time for softness. Her eyes, though, those were all softness, all fear, all stubborn faith. She caught my gaze and gave the smallest shake of her head, as if to say, "Not here, not at the door." Ethan led me into a foyer where a chandelier hung like frozen rain. Portraits lined the walls, but only one held the room, Elena Marlowe, Ethan's wife, the mother of the twins. Gone 2 years and still somehow present. Her portrait wasn't just paint, it was atmosphere. It was the curve of her smile, the elegant quiet of her gaze, the way her eyes seemed to follow Ethan like they were still trying to keep him upright. Ethan saw me looking. "Every morning," he said, as if reading my thoughts, "I say good morning to her. And every morning I pretend I don't expect an answer." We walked past a formal dining room untouched by breakfast, past a library with leather chairs that looked sat in but not enjoyed, past a grand staircase where the banister gleamed from constant polishing. The house was immaculate in the way grief makes you obsessive, as if order could keep loss from spreading. We turned down a corridor that changed the whole mood of the mansion, softer carpet, lower lights, a mural of clouds painted along the ceiling. "The twins' wing," Ethan said, and the words carried the tenderness he couldn't manage anywhere else. First we heard laughter, bright, sudden, like a bell. Then we saw him, Lucas Marlowe, 9 years old, barreling down the hallway in socks with a superhero cape over his pajamas, arms out like he was about to hug the world. He had Down syndrome, and his face held that open honesty children have before life teaches them to hide. "Dad!" Lucas shouted, and Ethan's whole body changed. His shoulders dropped, his jaw unclenched. For a second he wasn't a billionaire or a widower. He was just a father. Lucas launched into him, hugging tight. Ethan hugged back like he was afraid Lucas might vanish too. Then, quietly, from the doorway of a sunlit art room, Noah appeared. Noah moved differently, slower, observing. His eyes were deep pools that held more than they showed. He also had Down syndrome, and his expression carried a careful intelligence, an awareness of people's moods like he could taste them in the air. He held a sketchbook against his chest like a shield. He didn't run to Ethan. He walked up, paused, then lifted his free hand and pressed 2 fingers to Ethan's wrist. Gentle, deliberate, a secret ritual. Ethan offered his wrist without question, like this was their language. Like the touch meant, "I'm here. I'm still here." Noah looked at Ethan's face, studying it, then looked at me. He didn't smile, he didn't frown. He simply looked, and somehow I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. "Hello, Noah?" I said softly. Noah's eyes flicked down to my notebook and back up. He tilted his head, curious, then glanced toward Rosa. And Rosa, who had stayed near the doorway, quiet as a shadow, met Noah's gaze like she was meeting an old friend. There was something between them, invisible but undeniable. Lucas grabbed my hand like we'd known each other forever. "Are you the story man Dad says you tell stories?" "I do," I said, crouching, "but today I'm just listening." Lucas leaned in, stage whispering, "Mom used to listen better than Dad." Ethan's face tightened, the pain sharp and familiar. Rosa's breath hitched. She looked down, then up again, and the way she watched Ethan told me she'd already seen too much of his broken routine. Ethan cleared his throat. "Rosa has been helping us adjust. Adjust. That word people use when they can't say survive." Rosa finally spoke, voice steady but quiet. "The boys like routine. Mr. Marlowe likes control. The house likes silence." She swallowed. "But silence doesn't mean peace." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he wasn't used to being read so plainly. "Rosa," Ethan said, "Carlos is here, because you insisted." Rosa's hands trembled, and she curled them into fists to hide it. "I insisted because I couldn't sleep, because I kept hearing the sound of that door in my head." "What door?" I asked. Ethan's gaze sharpened. "What are you talking about?" Rosa looked at the ceiling, like she was asking for strength. Then she looked at the boys. "Not in front of them," she said. Lucas's smile faltered. "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart," Rosa said instantly, stepping closer. Her voice softened like a blanket. "Never. You're safe." Noah watched her mouth as she spoke, then pressed his fingers to his own wrist, copying their ritual. Rosa noticed and gave a tiny nod, like yes, exactly. Ethan exhaled, impatient with fear he didn't understand. "Rosa, please." We moved to the library, closing the heavy doors behind us. The room smelled like old paper and cedar smoke. Rain tapped the tall windows like nervous fingers. Ethan poured coffee he didn't drink. Rosa stood by the fireplace, shoulders squared, as if she'd decided to stop being invisible. "I was cleaning," she began. "I follow the schedule your staff left. I don't go into private areas without permission." She looked at Ethan. "But there was a draft coming from behind a bookshelf in the hallway near the wine cellar entrance." Ethan frowned. "There is no wine cellar entrance in that corridor." "There is," Rosa said softly. "It's hidden, a false panel, and it was loose." Ethan's face went rigid. "That's impossible." Rosa's voice didn't rise, but the truth in it did. "I found it. I didn't mean to, but it opened." My stomach tightened. Hidden spaces in old mansions are rarely innocent. They're built to hide something. Rosa continued. "There were stairs, cold air, the smell of damp stone. I heard something too, like a humming, not music, more like electricity." Ethan set his mug down too hard. "That area was sealed years ago, before Elena died." Rosa's eyes glistened. "That's what scared me, because someone's been down there recently." "How do you know?" I asked. Rosa swallowed. "Because there were fresh footprints in the dust, and because the padlock was new." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Who would—" He stopped, as if the answer might injure him. Rosa's gaze didn't flinch. I told myself it was none of my business. Then I thought about the boys, and I couldn't leave it alone. Her voice broke on the word boys. "What did you see?" I asked. Rosa's face tightened like she was holding back nausea, not from gore but from betrayal. "A room," she whispered. "Not a storage room, not a cellar. A room with shelves full of boxes, and a metal cabinet, and a safe, and taped to the wall." She stopped, her throat working. Ethan's voice came out low. "Rosa." She looked at him, and there was something fierce in her fear now. "Elena's handwriting," she said. "On a big manila envelope, it said, 'For the day Ethan forgets who the real enemy is.'" The words hung between us like smoke. Ethan went pale. "Elena didn't—" He stopped. His eyes darted to her portrait in the hallway beyond the library doors, as if expecting Elena's painted face to answer for itself. Rosa's hands shook harder now. "I didn't open it, I swear I didn't, but the safe was partly open like someone was interrupted, and inside, I saw 2 hospital bracelets." Ethan's breath caught. "Hospital bracelets?" Rosa nodded. "Tiny ones, newborn size, with the name Baby A and Baby B, but the date on them wasn't the twins' birthday." My pulse spiked. "What date?" Rosa forced herself to say it. 2 months later. Ethan stared at her like she'd slapped him. "That's not possible. The boys were born." "I know," Rosa said, voice breaking. "I looked at their baby album after because I thought I was losing my mind. Their birth date is on every page, but those bracelets, they were real, and they were hidden. Ethan paced. The billionaire who could buy answers suddenly trapped in a room with questions. This is insane. Elena would never... Rosa stepped forward, and for the first time I saw the depth behind her eyes. Someone who'd been poor enough to know secrets can be lethal. Someone who'd prayed through nights that rich people would never understand. Mr. Marlowe, she said gently, I don't think Elena was lying to you. I think she was trying to protect you. And the twins. I watched Ethan's hands curl, then unclench. Protect them from what? Rosa looked at the floor, then up at me. From the people who have keys, she whispered. From the people who walk through this house like they own it. My mind flashed to the lawyers, trustees, board members, who manage billionaires' family empires like they're running a corporation. Your family trust, I said. Ethan's eyes snapped to mine. Don't. But Rosa didn't back down. Your attorneys come often. The security chief changes shifts when they arrive. Doors open that don't open for anyone else. Ethan shook his head, denial fighting panic. You're suggesting... I'm suggesting, Rosa said, voice steady now, that someone has been in that cellar, and they don't want you to know what Elena left behind. Silence swallowed us. Then Ethan did something that surprised me. He didn't shout. He didn't throw money at the problem. He sank into a leather chair, like his bones suddenly couldn't hold him. My wife, he whispered, staring at his own hands, was the only person who ever told me no and made it sound like love. Rosa's voice softened. Then maybe she left you a no down there. A warning. Ethan looked at me. Carlos, you're a journalist. You smell scandal. Tell me this isn't... I kept my voice calm, because men like Ethan can't handle fear unless you hand it to them carefully. I'm telling you it's worth verifying, I said. But not with a crowd. Not with your usual people. Rosa nodded sharply. Exactly, because the usual people might be the problem. From the hallway we heard Lucas's laughter again, then Noah's quiet humming. 2 different sounds, 2 different hearts, both trusting the adults to keep the world steady. Ethan stood abruptly. We go now, he said, voice tight. We check it. Together. Rosa's eyes widened. Now? Ethan's grief sharpened into purpose. Now, before anyone else has time to cover it. He reached for the library door, then paused, as if the mansion itself had grabbed his wrist. In that pause I saw the truth. Ethan Marlowe was brave in boardrooms, fearless in markets, ruthless in negotiations, but a locked door in his own home made him look like a boy about to open a closet where a monster might be waiting. Rosa stepped beside him, not pushing, just present. I'll lead, she said. I know how to open it. Ethan swallowed. If Elena left something, if she hid something from me... Rosa's voice was barely audible, but it landed like a bell. Sometimes love hides the truth so it can survive long enough to be heard. Ethan opened the door. And as we walked toward that corridor, toward the false panel and the cold breath behind it, I couldn't stop thinking about Rosa's first words to me on the phone. The boys aren't safe, not from the world, but from the people who say they're protecting them. Because the most horrifying secrets aren't the ones that show you blood. They're the ones that show you betrayal. And we were about to step into it. When the hidden panel finally swung open, Noah appeared behind us, silent, watching, and raised his sketchbook as if he already knew what waited below. The corridor near the non-existent cellar entrance was lined with framed family photos, Ethan and Elena on a yacht, Ethan holding the twins as newborns, Elena laughing in the garden with her hair pinned back, sunlight caught in it like gold thread. The images were meant to be comforting, but in that moment they felt like a staged alibi. Rosa walked to a specific section of wall, her fingers moving with practiced certainty along the spine of a row of books that looked purely decorative. She pressed one volume inward. I heard a soft click, like a secret exhaling. A section of paneling shifted. Cold air slid out, damp and mineral, carrying the faint scent of old stone. Ethan's shoulders tensed. His hand reached toward the opening, then hesitated as if touching it might stain him. Stay upstairs, he called toward the twins' wing. Lucas's voice floated back, playful. We're not going anywhere. Noah is drawing a dragon. Ethan glanced at me. They won't come, he said, but the way he said it sounded like he needed it to be true. Rosa stepped into the opening first. She didn't look fearless. She looked faithful, like she had decided fear didn't get to choose her actions. The stairs were narrow, stone, old enough that each step held a shallow dip from decades of use. Small, recessed lights along the wall flickered, some new, some dead. That flicker made Ethan's breathing stutter. "You said you heard electricity," I murmured. Rosa nodded. "It was coming from down there, like something plugged in." Ethan's voice was sharp, trying to control the tremor underneath. "There shouldn't be power." We descended carefully, not rushing, not dramatic, just the quiet weight of 3 people stepping into a space that had been sealed by denial. At the bottom, the air felt colder, but not dangerous, just underground, like a cellar that had been forgotten. The room opened into a wide chamber with rough stone walls and a concrete floor. Shelving units lined one side, filled with labeled boxes. A metal filing cabinet sat against the far wall. The safe, large, grey, industrial, rested in a corner like a stubborn fact. And there, taped to the wall above the safe, was the manila envelope. For the day Ethan forgets who the real enemy is. Elena's handwriting was unmistakable, looping, elegant, slightly slanted, like her thoughts were always moving ahead of the world. Ethan stopped so hard I nearly bumped into him. His face held that strange expression men get when they meet a truth they can't negotiate with. Rosa didn't touch anything. She stood still, hands close to her chest, like she was in a chapel. "I told you," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer, eyes fixed on the envelope as if it might vanish. Why would she write that? My journalist's instinct wanted to open it instantly, but something about the room felt intentional. Like Elena had arranged every object as a message, like she'd built this place for a moment, exactly like this. Rosa pointed gently toward the safe. "It was open a little when I found it. Like this." She held her fingers apart, demonstrating. Ethan crouched, his sweater brushing dust. He peered at the safe door. It was shut now, locked. His voice went hoarse. "Someone closed it." My spine tingled. "Recently," I said. Rosa nodded. The dust was disturbed, like a person stood right here. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Security would know." Rosa's eyes flicked up. "Would they?" He didn't answer. I moved closer to the shelves, careful not to disturb anything, scanning labels. Medical, Elena, legal, trust, school, therapy notes, garden plans. Ordinary categories. But ordinary can be a costume. A small hum vibrated in the air, subtle like a refrigerator far away. I followed the sound to a power strip plugged into a newer outlet. The cord ran behind the filing cabinet. Rosa's face went pale. That wasn't there before. Ethan reached behind the cabinet and pulled out a small device, black, blinking, no bigger than his palm. A recorder, I guessed. Ethan's expression hardened. Or a transmitter. Rosa backed up a step, pressing her hand over her mouth. Someone was listening. Ethan stood, rage rising like a storm. "In my house?" I held my voice steady. "This is exactly why Rosa called," I said. "If the Trust's people have access, if someone is monitoring—" Ethan's voice snapped. "No one monitors me," Rosa said quietly. "You'd be surprised what people do when there are billions involved." That sentence landed because it wasn't accusation. It was knowledge. Ethan turned toward the envelope. His hand hovered. "We open it," he said. Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. "Not here." Ethan glared. "Why not?" Rosa met his eyes. "Because if someone is listening, they'll know exactly what you know, and they'll move faster than you can." Ethan breathed through his nose, trying to swallow his anger. Then he did something unexpected. He looked at Rosa as if she were the only adult in the room who could see the whole board. "What do we do?" he asked. Rosa's throat tightened. Her shoulders rose and fell once, like a silent prayer. "We take only what we need," she said. "We leave it looking untouched. We protect the boys first." The words "protect the boys" softened Ethan's face for a second. He nodded. We worked carefully, like thieves stealing back truth. Rosa took out her phone, but didn't record video. Too risky. Instead, she noted details in a small notebook she carried. The power strip, the device, the safe's position, the envelope's exact placement. "Why do you carry a notebook?" I asked her quietly. Rosa didn't look away from her writing. "Because when you grow up with people who don't believe you, you learn to keep receipts." Her words opened a door in her past, and I saw something raw behind them. I didn't push. Not yet. But I filed it away. Ethan reached for one box labeled Legal Trust and lifted the lid. Inside were folders, sealed, organized. He pulled one out and froze. "It has my signature," he whispered. I leaned over his shoulder. The documents were copies of trust amendments notarized with Ethan's name, except the signature looked off, close enough to pass in a glance, wrong enough to make my skin crawl. Rosa's voice was a thin thread. "Is it real?" Ethan's hands trembled. "It's not mine," he said. And the billionaire who could buy anything sounded like a child who'd lost his wallet and realized his identity could be stolen too. He set the folder down, breathing fast. "Someone forged—" "No," Rosa said softly, and it stopped him. "Someone assumed you'd never look." Ethan's eyes flashed. "Eleanor looked." Rosa nodded. "That's why she hid this." Ethan's gaze moved to another folder. Guardianship contingency. He opened it. His face drained of color again. "What?" I asked. He didn't speak for a full beat, and in that silence I heard the mansion above us. Distant pipes, the faint tick of a clock, the life of a home that didn't know it was standing over a trap. Ethan finally whispered, "If something happened to me, the trust could petition for custody." Rosa's hand flew to her mouth. "Custody of the boys." Ethan nodded, eyes glazed. "Because of incapacity concerns. Because of—" He swallowed hard. "Because they're vulnerable dependents." My stomach twisted. Institutional villain. Not a single bad person. An entire system. Lawyers, trustees, boards, policies, all polished and reasonable on paper. Rosa's voice cracked. Elena knew. Ethan's lips moved, but no sound came out. He looked like he'd been punched by ink. I thought of Noah's quiet hand on his father's wrist. Lucas's laughter. Their innocence. A custody petition dressed as protection would shatter them without ever spilling a drop of blood. Ethan shut the folder with a violent snap. "No." Rosa stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Mr. Marlowe, you can't fight this with anger. You fight it with proof." Ethan stared at her, and I saw the first real shift, the billionaire's usual certainty bending towards someone else's wisdom. "How did you know to look for drafts behind books?" I asked Rosa suddenly. Rosa's eyes flicked up. For a second her control loosened. "Because when I was little," she said quietly, "I lived in a place where secrets were hidden in walls." Ethan's brow furrowed. "What place?" Rosa hesitated, then spoke like she was stepping barefoot onto memory. "A group home," she said. "I was there until I was 13. The staff called it shelter, but it felt like waiting." Her jaw tightened. "The day I learned the papers about my mother were kept behind a locked cabinet, I learned something else too. People hide the truth where they think you'll never belong." That was the first flashback she gave us. Not fully formed, but enough to understand the source of her instincts. Ethan's anger softened into something else. Shame. "I'm sorry," he said, and it sounded unfamiliar on him. Rosa shook her head. "Don't be sorry," she whispered. "Be awake." A sudden sound from above. Soft footsteps, a door closing. We all froze. Ethan's eyes widened. "The boys—" "No," Rosa said quickly. "Their wing is far. That sounded like the hallway." I felt my pulse thud in my ears. Someone else in the house. Ethan reached for his phone, but Rosa caught his wrist, gentle, firm. "No calls," she breathed. "If security is compromised—" Ethan's jaw clenched, but he listened. He nodded once, sharp. We moved silently toward the stairs, not running, not panicking, just careful. Rosa extinguished the small light by the wall switch, leaving the cellar in dim, safe darkness. She slid the false panel at the top of the stairs open just a crack and peered out. The hallway beyond was empty, but the air felt disturbed, like perfume lingering after someone passes. Rosa's eyes widened. "That smell," she whispered. Ethan leaned in, inhaled, and his face changed in a way that hurt to witness. "Elena's perfume," he murmured. My skin prickled. Either Ethan's grief was playing cruel tricks, or someone was wearing Elena's scent like a key. Ethan's voice went raw. "No one has that bottle." Rosa's eyes shone with fear and certainty. "Then someone wants you to think she's still here," she whispered, "or wants to remind you who had access to her things." We left the panel slightly open, stepping out into the corridor. Ethan moved fast now, heading toward the twins' wing. We found Lucas in the art room, giggling as he smeared blue paint across a dragon's wings. Noah sat at the table, focused, carefully outlining scales in pencil. Both looked up when Ethan entered. Lucas beamed. "Dad, look, the dragon is protecting the castle." Noah lifted his sketchbook toward Ethan. The dragon he'd drawn was different. Its body coiled around two small figures standing close together. Twins. Ethan swallowed, eyes shining. Noah tapped 2 fingers to Ethan's wrist. Then he pointed to the hallway, then to the floor, then made a slow, circling motion with his hand, like a warning. Rosa's breath caught. "He's saying, someone else is here." Ethan looked at Noah. "Noah," he whispered, "did you hear something?" Noah didn't answer with words. He simply put his palm flat on the table, feeling vibrations through the wood, then looked up and shook his head once. Lucas's smile faded. "Dad, are we in trouble?" Ethan knelt in front of him, forcing his voice to stay calm. "No," he said, "but we're going to have a quiet day, okay?" Lucas nodded, but his eyes glistened. "I miss Mom." Ethan's face crumpled for a moment. He pulled Lucas into a hug. "Me too," he whispered. Rosa watched, and I saw her hands tremble like she wanted to fix what money couldn't touch. She whispered almost to herself, "God, give me the right words." Then she stepped closer to Noah, lowering her voice. "Noah," she said gently, "do you remember our secret?" Noah's eyes flicked to hers, alert. He pressed 2 fingers to his wrist. Rosa smiled softly. "Yes," she whispered. 2 taps means safe. 3 taps means we need to be quiet and watch. Noah nodded once, solemn, and tapped 3 times. My throat tightened. Secret bond. A private language in a house full of locked doors. We led the boys to the conservatory, where sunlight filtered through glass and painted their faces warm. Lucas chased a butterfly among the orchids. Noah sat on a bench drawing, his pencil moving like he was translating the world into something he could control. Ethan pulled Rosa and me aside near a fountain. His voice was low, urgent. "We can't trust my lawyers," he said. "We can't trust the trust." Rosa's eyes held steady. "Then we build our own circle," she replied. "Just enough people, just enough truth." Ethan looked at me. "Carlos, can you—" I raised a hand. "I can document," I said, "but we need the envelope, and we need to know what's inside that safe." Rosa's gaze hardened. "And we need to know who's been here," she said, "because they're not done." A faint sound from the foyer echoed through the mansion, soft, controlled footsteps like someone who belonged. Ethan's face went cold. Rosa whispered, "They're here now." As the front door clicked open upstairs, Noah suddenly stood, pressed 3 fingers to his wrist, our warning, and pointed toward the corridor with a look that said, "The real enemy just walked in." The sound of voices drifted down from the foyer, polite, measured, the kind of conversation that happens between people who never have to raise their voices to win. Ethan's face tightened. "Stay with the boys," he murmured to Rosa, then looked at me. "Carlos, with me." Rosa's eyes flashed. "No," she said softly but firmly. "If they see you together, they'll know you're aligned. Go alone. Let Carlos observe from a distance." Ethan bristled, then exhaled, swallowing pride. "Fine." He turned to Noah and Lucas, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Stay here," he said. "Rosa's in charge." Lucas saluted dramatically. "Yes, Captain Dad." Noah simply watched Ethan's face and pressed 2 fingers to his wrist again, slower this time, like "remember me." Ethan touched Noah's fingers gently, then walked away. I stayed back, half hidden behind a row of tall palms in the conservatory, watching the foyer through the glass doors. Rosa sat with the boys, her posture calm, her eyes never fully leaving the hallway. She had the vigilance of someone who'd learned that danger often arrives in expensive shoes. In the foyer stood 3 people, a woman in a tailored grey coat with a clipboard, a man with a briefcase and the smile of a practiced negotiator, and Ethan's head of security, Trent, hovering a step behind like an accessory. The man with the briefcase stepped forward first. "Ethan," he said warmly, too warmly, "we didn't expect you home today." Ethan's voice was polite, clipped. "I live here," he replied. "What do you need, Richard?" Richard, the trust's lead attorney, the kind of man who could say best interest while rearranging your life. The woman with the clipboard spoke next. "Mr. Marlowe, we're conducting a routine wellness check," she said, smiling as if she were offering a gift. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "A wellness check?" Richard chuckled softly. "Ethan, don't take it personally. With minors in the household and the recent stresses, the trust board simply wants to ensure stability." Stability. That word again. Like the boys were a liability to be managed. Ethan's jaw flexed. "My children are stable." The woman's smile remained. "Of course," she said. "We'd just like to verify routines, support systems, caregivers." caregivers. My gaze flicked to Trent. His face was unreadable, but he didn't look surprised. My stomach sank. Either he had agreed to this, or he had been pressured into allowing it. Rosa's hand tightened on the bench beside Noah, but she kept her voice light as she spoke to the boys. "Lucas, do you want to show me how butterflies sleep?" she asked. Lucas giggled, delighted by the question. "They close their wings like this." He hugged himself dramatically. Noah watched the foyer through the glass, his eyes sharp. He set his pencil down, then stood and moved closer to Rosa, leaning into her side. She rested her hand on his shoulder, grounding him. In the foyer, Richard continued, "Ethan, we also need to discuss the annual review of the Trust's guardianship contingencies." Ethan's face went white, just for a second, so the Cellar documents were not paranoia. They were a plan already in motion. Ethan forced steadiness. "We'll discuss it with my counsel." Richard smiled. "Your counsel is appointed by the Trust," he said gently, like reminding someone of a fact they'd forgotten. Ethan's hands curled into fists, then loosened again. He glanced toward the hallway that led deeper into the mansion, toward the hidden panel, toward the cellar, toward Elena's warning. I watched him make a decision, not with his mouth, but with his posture. He stepped aside. "Come into my office," he said. "We'll talk there." Richard nodded, pleased. The woman followed. Trent followed too. As they moved out of sight, Rosa stood up smoothly, guiding the boys toward the garden doors. "Let's go check the roses," she said brightly. Lucas clapped. "Mum's roses." Noah didn't move at first. He looked at Rosa's face, searching. Rosa leaned down and whispered, "3 taps," then tapped Noah's wrist 3 times. Noah nodded and followed. Outside, the garden air was cool and damp. White roses drooped under rain-kissed petals. The fountain murmured. The world felt normal, and that normality made the threat inside feel even more sinister, like a snake moving under a picnic blanket. Rosa walked the boys along the path, but her eyes kept scanning the windows, the doors, the corners where staff might appear. Lucas ran ahead, counting roses loudly. Noah hung back, his sketchbook clutched tight. I moved beside Rosa and lowered my voice. "You're handling this like you've lived it." Rosa's mouth tightened. "I have," she whispered. Then she gave me the first real piece of her story, one she hadn't offered, even on the phone. "My father," she said quietly, "is sick. Not dramatic sick, just slowly fading. He lives with me. I took this job because the pay would cover his home nurse and my daughter's school." She swallowed. "And because when I interviewed here, I saw the boy's drawings on the wall. I saw something familiar." "You have a daughter?" I asked. Rosa nodded. "Sophia, 7. The kind of child who thinks every sad adult is just a hug away from being okay." She smiled faintly. Then it vanished. "If I lose this job, I lose everything I'm holding together." Her stakes were clear. A child depending on her, a parent needing her, a fragile life balanced on this paycheck. And yet, she was risking it all for the Marlowe twins. "Why?" I asked gently. Rosa looked at Noah, who had stopped near a rose bush and was tracing a petal with his finger, like it was sacred. "Because I know what it is to be talked about like paperwork," she whispered. "I know what it feels like when grown-ups decide your life in rooms you're not allowed into." I felt my throat tighten. "The group home." Rosa nodded. "When I was 9, she said, voice trembling, I learned my caseworker called me a placement. Not a girl, not a child, a placement." Her eyes shone. "And the day they moved me without warning, I promised God, if he ever put me in a position to protect someone small, I would not look away." She looked upward briefly like she was checking that promise. A sudden cry from inside the mansion made Lucas freeze. It wasn't a scream, just a raised voice. Ethan's voice, strained. Lucas's smile faded. "Dad sounds sad." Rosa walked to him quickly, crouching. "Sometimes grown-ups have big feelings," she said gently. "But you're safe. We're right here." Lucas's lower lip trembled. Mom used to fix Dad. Rosa didn't correct him. She simply hugged Lucas, rocking slightly. "I know," she whispered. Noah watched, his eyes heavy. He lifted his sketchbook and turned it toward Rosa. He'd drawn a door, tall, locked, and beside it a small figure holding a key. Rosa's breath caught. "That's you?" she whispered. Noah pointed to Rosa, then to the key, then to the door. Rosa swallowed hard. "Okay," she whispered. "I won't drop it." Inside, the office door opened and Trent emerged, walking fast. He scanned the garden, saw Rosa and headed toward her. My body tensed. Trent's voice was low. "Rosa," he said, not unfriendly, "Mr. Marlowe wants you inside." Rosa didn't move. "Why?" Trent glanced at the boys, then back at Rosa. "Just come." Rosa's eyes narrowed. "Are they asking about me?" Trent exhaled. "They're asking about caregivers," he admitted, "and about supervision." Rosa's stomach tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "I'm not leaving the boys alone." Trent's gaze flicked to Noah and Lucas, then softened slightly. "I'll stay nearby," he said. "But you need to hear this. Mr. Marlowe needs you." Rosa hesitated, then looked at Noah. "2 taps means safe," she whispered. Noah tapped 2 fingers to his wrist. Rosa turned to Lucas. "You stay with Noah, okay? You two are a team." Lucas nodded, solemn. "Team twins." Rosa took a breath and walked toward the office with Trent, leaving me with the boys in the garden. Noah sat on the bench, drawing fast now, his pencil pressing hard. Lucas sat beside him, unusually quiet. "Lucas," I said softly, "what do you do when you feel scared?" Lucas looked at me like the answer was obvious. "I hug," he whispered. "But sometimes Dad doesn't want hugs. He thinks he needs to be strong." His eyes filled, and the line that followed hit me like a punch, because it came from a child who understood too much. "Mom said strong is when you let people hold you." I swallowed hard. "That's wise," I managed. Lucas sniffed. "Dad forgets." Noah suddenly pressed his palm to the bench again, feeling. He looked toward the mansion and frowned. "What is it, Noah?" I asked. Noah pointed to the house, then made a sweeping motion with his hand as if erasing. Then he pointed to his own chest. I tried to interpret. "Someone is changing things?" I guessed. "Trying to erase something?" Noah nodded once, slow. Inside the office I couldn't hear words, but I saw movement through the window. Ethan pacing, Richard sitting too comfortably, the clipboard woman writing notes like she was documenting a product. Then Rosa appeared at the window briefly, her face pale, her hands clasped tight in front of her as if she were physically holding her faith together. I saw her lips move in a silent prayer. Later she told me what happened in that office, but I'll tell you now, because it explains the storm that came after. Richard had slid a folder across Ethan's desk and spoken like he was reading weather. "We've had concerns," he said. "Your sleep patterns, your emotional stability, your reliance on staff. In the best interest of the children, we're recommending a temporary adjustment. Additional oversight." Ethan's voice had gone low. "Oversight?" The clipboard woman had smiled. "A family support specialist, regular check-ins, and a review of guardianship protocols." Ethan had leaned forward. "You're threatening to take my sons." Richard had lifted a hand. "No one is threatening. We're ensuring the trust is fulfilled." Ethan had slammed his palm on the desk, hard enough to rattle the pen holder. "Not violence, just despair spilling over. The trust exists because I built it," he'd said, "because I gave you power." Richard had smiled gently. "And power always has safeguards, Ethan." Rosa had stepped forward then, unable to remain silent. "With respect," she'd said, "the boys are not a risk to manage." The clipboard woman had turned to her, eyes cool. "And you are?" Rosa had swallowed. "The housekeeper." Richard had raised an eyebrow. "Ah, new." Rosa had felt the trap closing. "Yes," she'd said, voice steady. "And I've seen enough to know those boys need love, not paperwork." Richard's smile had sharpened. "We appreciate your passion, but we will be speaking to staff privately as part of our review." That was when Rosa had understood. They were building a case, piece by piece, using the household as testimony. Back in the garden, the office door opened. Ethan stepped out, face drained, eyes burning. Rosa followed, her shoulders rigid. Ethan walked straight to Noah and Lucas, knelt in front of them, forcing his voice calm. "Hey," he said, "we're going to have an early movie day." "Okay?" Lucas nodded slowly. "Dad, are you mad?" Ethan's face cracked. "No," he whispered. "I'm awake." Noah studied Ethan's eyes, then reached out and pressed his fingers to Ethan's wrist again. 2 taps, then 3. Ethan swallowed. "Noah," he murmured. I know." Rosa looked at Ethan, and I saw the moment she chose something bigger than her job. "Mr. Marlowe," she said quietly, "we need the envelope, and we need to move it now. Not because the boys are in danger, because the truth is." Ethan's breath hitched. "Where?" Rosa's voice was steady as stone. Somewhere the trust can't reach with a clipboard. Ethan looked at the mansion, then at the garden, then at his sons. His pride fought his fear, then lost. "Carlos," he said, voice breaking, "you can keep a secret?" "I can keep a truth," I said, "even when it's expensive." Ethan nodded once, then turned to Rosa. "Show me how to do this," he said. And Rosa, the woman hired to clean floors, became the only person in that house who knew how to clean a lie. That night, after the mansion went quiet, Rosa led Ethan back to the hidden panel, because Elena's envelope wasn't just a warning, it was a trigger. Night at the Marlowe mansion didn't feel like darkness. It felt like velvet pulled over a wound. The halls dimmed, the chandeliers softened into amber pools, the garden lights glowed like distant stars. Somewhere in the twins' wing, a lullaby played from a small speaker, simple piano notes that sounded like Elena's hands. Ethan tucked Lucas into bed first. Lucas insisted on the same ritual every night, 3 kisses, forehead, cheek, nose, and then a whispered, "I love you bigger than the house." Ethan did it, voice rough. "I love you bigger than the house," he echoed. Lucas yawned. "Bigger than money, too." Ethan blinked hard. "Yes," he whispered, "bigger than money." Lucas smiled sleepily. "Good," he murmured, "because money can't hug." Then Noah's turn. Noah's room was quieter. Soft lamp, weighted blanket, a shelf of sketchbooks arranged by color. On his wall hung Elena's scarf, folded neatly, like a piece of her had been pinned there on purpose. Noah didn't want kisses. Noah wanted truth. He sat up in bed, watching Ethan's face, and tapped 2 fingers to his own wrist. Ethan offered his wrist. Noah tapped it twice, then paused, then tapped it 3 times, warning. Ethan swallowed. "I know," he whispered, "but I'm here." Noah's eyes glistened. He pointed to Ethan's chest, then made a small motion with his hand like a heartbeat. Ethan's breath shook. "My heart," he whispered. Noah nodded once. Ethan leaned closer, forehead nearly touching Noah's. "It's yours," Ethan murmured. "Always." Noah's face softened, and he lay back down, satisfied, not by comfort, but by sincerity. Once the twins were asleep and the house quieted into its nighttime hum, Rosa met Ethan and me near the library. She wore a cardigan over her uniform now, hair still pulled back, but her eyes held a determination that made her look taller than she was. "No phones," she whispered. "No lights in the corridor. And we move like we're guests in Elena's plan." Ethan nodded, jaw tight. "If this is a trap." "It's not," Rosa said quietly. "It's a lifeline." We reached the hidden panel. Rosa pressed the book again. The click sounded louder at night, like the house itself reacting. Cold air slid out. We descended. The cellar room waited in dimness. Rosa used a small flashlight with a covered lens, enough light to see, not enough to announce. Ethan stood before Elena's envelope for a long moment. His breathing was shallow, like the paper might bite. Then he reached up and gently removed it from the wall, as if taking down a fragile photograph. Rosa held the light steady. "We open it and photograph everything," she said, "but not with a phone. With your old camera, Mr. Marlowe, the one you keep in the library." Ethan nodded. He'd brought it, dusty but functional, proof that once, before grief, he'd captured beauty for the sake of it. I watched his hands shake as he broke the seal. Inside was a letter, folded carefully, and beneath it a thin stack of documents. Ethan unfolded the letter first. His eyes moved across the page, and his face changed in slow motion. Confusion, denial, recognition, then a kind of devastated clarity that made him sway slightly. Rosa reached out, not touching him, just close. "What does it say?" she whispered. Ethan's voice came out as a broken breath. She knew," he whispered. "She knew the trust was watching." He read aloud, not everything, but enough for the room to fill with Elena's voice. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means they finally made you forget what I spent years trying to teach you. The most dangerous people will always wear the mask of help." Ethan's throat tightened. He kept reading, eyes wet. "The boys are not the trust's property. They are not a line item, and they are not a contingency." Rosa's hand trembled near her mouth. I felt my own chest tighten. Eleanor was speaking across death like a mother refusing to be erased. Ethan turned the page. His lips moved silently. Then he whispered, "Oh God." Rosa's voice was barely there. "What? Ethan lifted one document, and the flashlight beam caught the words, "Confidential Settlement Agreement, Fertility Clinic." My mind clicked into place with cold certainty. Not a dungeon, not blood, not violence. A different horror identity stolen by systems that call it procedure. Ethan's voice shook. "The clinic," he whispered. "The embryos." Rosa's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Ethan's face crumpled. "Eleanor wrote that the clinic mixed samples," he said, voice cracking, "that our embryos were switched. And when she found out, the trust's attorneys pressured her into signing a settlement. Quietly. So the story wouldn't—" he swallowed. "So the story wouldn't destabilize the Marlowe legacy." Rosa's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling. I felt heat rise behind my eyes, because the horror wasn't what happened in a dark room. The horror was that it could happen in bright offices with polished floors and be buried under legal language. Ethan kept reading, hands shaking. "She said the trust threatened to declare me unfit if I didn't cooperate," he whispered. "They said the boy's status would make the public question my capacity as a father. They told her she could protect them by keeping it quiet." Rosa whispered. "She sacrificed her own truth." Ethan's shoulders shook. "She carried it alone," he said, and the sentence sounded like a knife. Rosa steadied her breath. "Mr. Marlowe," she said softly, "this doesn't mean the boys aren't yours." Ethan looked at her, eyes wild. "But it means my entire life was managed," he whispered. "It means the trust, my own system, used my children as leverage." He lowered his face into his hands, breathing hard. Not dramatic, just human. Rosa's voice softened. "Elena didn't hide it to deceive you," she said. "She hid it to keep them from becoming a headline or a case." Ethan stared at the documents again, then at the safe. "What's in there?" he whispered. Rosa swallowed. "The bracelets," she said. "Maybe more." Ethan knelt and gripped the safe handle. It was locked. He looked up at Rosa, helpless for the first time since I'd met him. "I don't know the code," he said hoarsely. Rosa's gaze flicked to the letter. "Elena might have left it," she whispered. We scanned the pages. At the bottom of the second letter, Eleanor had written a line that made my skin prickle. "The code is the only date you ever truly listened to me." Ethan's face twisted in confusion, then pain. "Listened," he whispered. Rosa's voice was gentle. "A date that mattered to her," she said. Ethan's eyes lifted toward the dark ceiling, searching memory like it was a room he'd abandoned. Then his breath hitched. "The day she told me she was pregnant," he whispered. "Not the day the boys were born. The day she told me felt it because she was terrified and excited, and I—" He swallowed hard. I put my phone down. I listened. His fingers punched in the numbers. The safe clicked. Ethan froze, staring at the handle like it had just spoken. He opened it slowly. Inside were envelopes sealed in plastic, a velvet pouch, and 2 newborn bracelets exactly as Rosa described. Baby A and Baby B, dated 2 months after the twins' celebrated birth date. Not proof of harm, proof of something manipulated. Ethan lifted them like they weighed 1,000 pounds. His hands shook. Rosa cried silently, pressing her knuckles to her lips. Then Ethan pulled out the velvet pouch. Inside was a flash drive. My stomach tightened. "Elena," I whispered. Ethan's voice was ragged. "She recorded something." Rosa's eyes widened. "We can't play it here," she whispered. "If someone is listening," as if answering, a faint click echoed above us, not from the cellar, from the corridor, like the hidden panel shifting slightly. We all froze. Rosa cut the flashlight. Darkness swallowed us, safe but terrifying. Ethan's voice was a whisper. Someone opened it. Rosa's breathing went shallow. "Stay still," she breathed. "No movement, no noise." We listened. Footsteps above, soft, controlled, not rushing. Someone who knew the house, someone pausing as if sensing presence. My heart hammered so loudly I felt sure it would give us away. But the rule was clear. No children here, no danger to them. Only us in the basement, holding a truth someone wanted buried. Ethan's hand brushed Rosa's in the dark, and for a second the billionaire gripped her fingers like a lifeline. A voice above, barely audible. "Hello?" It was Trent, but it didn't sound like help. It sounded like confirmation. Rosa's whisper trembled. "If he's with them." Ethan's voice broke. "He's my security." Rosa's eyes glistened in the dark, even though I couldn't see them. I could feel it. "Institution," she whispered. "System." Ethan's breath shook. "What do we do?" Rosa took one slow breath, and I heard her faith like a steady drum. "We leave," she whispered. "Quiet. Now. And we don't go back upstairs with these in our hands." Ethan's voice was desperate. "Where?" Rosa whispered. "The greenhouse has a side exit, and there's a safe place I know. Small, humble, not on anyone's map." Ethan held the bracelets and the flash drive, trembling like he'd become the very thing the trust wanted him to be. Unstable. Rosa's voice firmed. "Mr. Marlowe," she whispered, "you can fall later. Right now, you move." We climbed the stairs in darkness, slow, careful, with Rosa leading and Ethan following, every breath held. At the top, Rosa eased the panel open a fraction. The hallway was empty, but the air carried a scent, faint, floral, familiar. Elena's perfume. Ethan's eyes flooded. "No," he whispered. Rosa's voice was steel wrapped in kindness. "Yes," she said. "They're using her memory as a weapon." We slipped through the conservatory, out the side door, into the damp night garden where the roses shivered in the wind. And behind us, somewhere inside the mansion, a door closed softly, as if the house had just been relocked. Rosa didn't take Ethan toward the gates. She took him toward the one place the trust would never suspect, the little church at the edge of town where her father still waited with a light on. The church was small, old, and warm in a way the mansion could never be. A simple white building with a wooden door that creaked like honesty. Inside it smelled like candle wax and pine cleaner, and the faint sweetness of someone's perfume that wasn't Elena's, just ordinary people trying to make a sacred place feel cared for. Rosa led Ethan and me through a side entrance into a modest office behind the sanctuary, a space no board member would ever think to search. There was a small desk, a kettle, a worn Bible, and a framed photo of a smiling little girl, Sophia, missing 2 front teeth and holding a popsicle like a trophy. Ethan stared at the photo as if it was a foreign language. "Your daughter," he whispered. Rosa nodded. "She's with my neighbor tonight," she said quietly. "My father is in the back room." Ethan's eyes flicked to the doorway. "Your father is here." Rosa's throat tightened. "He can't be alone much anymore," she admitted. "I promised him I'd keep him in the light." For a moment, the billionaire who owned a mansion looked suddenly small inside this humble room. Rosa locked the door, then set the velvet pouch and the bracelets on the desk with reverence, like evidence and prayer could share the same surface. "Now," she whispered, "we listen." Ethan's hands trembled as he plugged the flash drive into an old laptop the priest kept for administrative work. The screen glowed, pale and fragile. A single file appeared. "Elena, if you ever doubt yourself." Ethan's breath broke. "Elena," he whispered, like saying her name might bring her back. He clicked play. Elena's voice filled the room. Soft, controlled, intimate. Not a ghost. A mother. "Ethan, my love, if you're hearing this, I'm not there to hold your hand. So I need my words to do what my arms can't." Ethan's shoulders shook. Rosa's eyes filled. My own throat tightened. Elena's voice carried the weight of someone who had known she would die before the truth could safely live. Elena continued, explaining the clinic error, the settlement pressure, the trust's manipulation. She spoke carefully, without medical promises, without dramatic claims, just the painful facts and the fear of what systems can do when image matters more than children. They will tell you it's for stability. They will say, "best interest," like it's scripture. But Ethan, the boys are not a brand. Ethan's face crumpled. He covered his mouth, but a sob still escaped, raw and unpolished. Elena's voice softened further. "If the trust tries to separate you, remember this. Fatherhood is not biology. It's the choices you make when no one is watching. If you choose them, you are theirs. If you choose your pride, you will lose them." Ethan shook his head slowly, tears sliding. "I chose pride," he whispered. "So many times." Rosa stepped closer, hand hovering, then gently placed her palm on his shoulder. "Choose now," she whispered. The recording ended with Elena's final line, so quiet it felt like she was leaning into Ethan's ear. "Find the person who sees the boys as souls, not symbols. Trust her. She will not abandon them." Ethan stared at the blank screen, stunned, then looked at Rosa like the room had shifted, and she was suddenly the center of it. "You," he whispered. Rosa's eyes filled, and she shook her head slightly, as if she didn't want the weight of that prophecy. I'm just doing what's right, she said softly. Ethan stood abruptly, pacing, grief colliding with fury. We go to the police, he said. We sue. We burn the trust to the ground. Rosa's voice cut through, calm but firm. Not yet. Ethan stopped, staring at her. Not yet. Rosa's eyes held his. If you move too loudly, they'll move faster, she said. You need a plan that protects the boys emotionally too, not just legally. Ethan's jaw tightened. They're my sons. Rosa nodded. Then don't let them become collateral in your war. That word, collateral, made Ethan flinch. I spoke carefully. We need documentation, I said. Independent counsel. A trusted advocate who isn't tied to the trust. Ethan's laugh was bitter. Everyone is tied to something. Rosa's voice softened. Not God, she whispered. And she didn't say it like a lecture. She said it like a handrail. Ethan's eyes glistened, skepticism cracking. I don't, he began. Rosa didn't push. She simply opened a drawer and pulled out a small, worn rosary. My grandmother gave me this, she said quietly. When I left the group home, she told me, faith isn't pretending the storm isn't real. Faith is choosing to walk anyway. Ethan stared at the rosary like it was an artifact from a world he'd never had to enter. Rosa continued, voice trembling with memory. When I was 13, I prayed for a family. Not rich, not perfect, just mine. She swallowed. I didn't get it the way I wanted, but I got chances to be family for others. Ethan's eyes flicked to the bracelets on the desk. Baby A, baby B, proof that someone had tried to rewrite his son's beginning. Rosa's voice grew steadier. We can fight, she said, but we fight smart. Quiet first, then loud when you can win. Ethan sat back down, shoulders slumping. What do you need from me? He asked, voice low. Rosa hesitated, then said the truth. I need you to trust me, she whispered. And I need you to accept that money won't fix this. Only humility will. Ethan looked like he wanted to argue. Then his face softened in surrender. He lowered his head, elbows on knees, hands clasped. And then, the power reversal I will never forget. Ethan Marlowe slid off the chair onto the floor in front of Rosa. Not as a performance, not as manipulation, as collapse. He knelt. His voice broke. I don't know how to do this, he whispered. I don't know how to protect them without becoming the thing Elena warned me about. He looked up at Rosa, eyes full, raw. Please, help me. Rosa's hands trembled. She didn't look triumphant. She looked terrified of the responsibility and still willing. She knelt too, not above him, beside him. We do it together, she whispered. But you lead with love, not fear. Ethan nodded, tears dropping onto his sweater. I will, he breathed. I will. We moved fast after that, not with chaos, but with care. Rosa called a lawyer recommended by the church, an attorney who specialized in family advocacy and had publicly challenged powerful trusts before. Not a miracle worker, just competent and independent. Ethan didn't call his usual team. He didn't alert the trust. He did the hardest thing for a man like him. He waited, he listened, he followed guidance that wasn't bought. Meanwhile, we had to return to the mansion before dawn, quietly, without raising suspicion because the boys still needed normal morning light. Rosa insisted on it. They don't get punished for grown-up battles, she said. When we arrived back at the mansion, the foyer was silent, the chandeliers dim, the portrait of Elena watching. Rosa took a slow breath. 2 taps, she whispered to herself. Safe. In the twins' wing, Lucas woke first, rubbing his eyes. Rosa, he called softly. Did you go somewhere? Rosa sat on the edge of his bed and smiled gently. I went to find a way to keep your garden safe, she said. Lucas blinked. The roses? Rosa nodded. And the people who love them. Lucas's eyes filled. Dad was crying yesterday, he whispered. Is Dad okay? Rosa swallowed. He's learning, she said softly, learning how to let love hold him. Lucas thought, then whispered a line that sliced through me with childlike precision. Mum said when Dad cries, his heart is talking. Rosa's eyes glistened. Yes, she whispered, that's exactly what it is. Noah sat up in his bed, watching. He didn't ask questions with words. He lifted his sketchbook and turned it toward Rosa. He'd drawn a small church, a candle, and 3 figures. 1 tall, 1 medium, 1 small, standing under a roof that looked like safety. Rosa's breath caught. "You knew," she whispered. Noah tapped 2 fingers to his wrist, then 3, then 2 again, like a sentence in their private language. Rosa smiled through tears. "Safe," she translated softly. "Watch. Safe." Ethan entered the room behind her. He looked like he hadn't slept, but something in him had shifted. His shoulders were still heavy with grief, but his eyes were clearer, less controlled, more human. Lucas launched into a hug. "Dad!" Ethan held him tight. Then Noah, more cautiously, reached out and pressed his fingers to Ethan's wrist. Ethan didn't just offer his wrist. He pressed Noah's hand to his own chest, gently, so Noah could feel the steady rhythm beneath. Noah's eyes widened slightly. He focused, not hearing like a miracle, but sensing the vibration and the truth of it. Ethan whispered, "This is real," voice shaking. "I'm here." Noah looked up, and for the first time I saw him shape words with intention. Not forced, not dramatic, just honest. "Dad," Noah said softly, and Ethan froze because Noah rarely used words when emotion was too big. Noah pressed his palm again to Ethan's chest, then whispered the line that will stay with me forever. "Dad, I can hear your heart." Ethan's face crumpled. He pulled Noah into a hug so careful and reverent it looked like prayer. Outside the twins' room, footsteps approached. Trent. Ethan straightened, the father replacing the billionaire. He stepped into the hallway and closed the door gently behind him, keeping the boys inside their calm. Trent's face was controlled. "Sir," he said, "the trust's attorney called. They want another meeting today." Ethan's voice was steady. "No," he said. Trent's jaw tightened. "They won't like—" Ethan stepped closer. "Trent," he said quietly, "how long have you been letting them into my house?" Trent's eyes flickered, just a fraction. "Sir, Ethan didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply held Trent's gaze like a mirror. "Elena's perfume," he said softly. "Someone wore it last night." Trent's face went pale. Rosa stood behind Ethan, silent, her presence like an anchor. Trent's voice dropped. "They told me it was for oversight," he whispered. "They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd replace me and I'd lose my pension. They said it was routine. System, institution. Pressure disguised as procedure." Ethan nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me," he said, surprising us all. "Now you have a choice. You work for my children's safety or you walk away from this house." Trent's throat worked. "I choose the boys," he whispered. Ethan's eyes held steady. "Then the first thing you do is this," he said. "You help us document every unauthorized entry, every call, every wellness check." Trent nodded, shaken. That afternoon, the independent lawyer arrived with a court order for preservation of records and an emergency petition to block trust interference. Not a cinematic victory, just a lawful barrier built on evidence Elena had hidden. Richard and the clipboard woman returned confident, but this time Ethan met them in the foyer with Rosa beside him and with counsel not tied to the trust. Richard's smile faltered as he saw the paperwork. "Ethan," Richard began, voice smooth, "this is unnecessary." Ethan's voice was calm, deadly in its clarity. "My wife left documentation," he said. "You pressured her into silence. You forged amendments. You monitored my home." He took a breath. "You used my children as leverage." Richard's smile tightened. "Those are serious allegations." Ethan looked at Rosa, then at his son's wing, and something in him softened into resolve. "I'm serious," he said. The clipboard woman's pen hovered, uncertain for the first time. The system had expected grief and denial. It hadn't expected a father willing to kneel, listen, and change. In the days that followed, the trust's power didn't evaporate, but it cracked. Investigations began, meetings shifted. People who'd hidden behind policy suddenly needed lawyers for themselves. And Rosa, who had risked her job, her stability, her father's care, received something she hadn't expected. Ethan called her into the library one evening. The fire glowed. Elena's portrait watched. "I can't repay you," Ethan said, voice low. Rosa shook her head. "I didn't do it for payment." Ethan nodded. "I know," he said. Then his voice broke slightly. "That's why I need to do this the right way." He placed an envelope on the table, employment papers, but also a trust-protected stipend for Rosa's father's care and a scholarship fund for Sophia. Not charity as control, support as gratitude, structured through independent oversight so it couldn't be used against her. Rosa's eyes filled. Mr. Marlowe. Ethan raised a hand. Ethan, he said softly. Please. Rosa swallowed, trembling. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan looked up at Elena's portrait. She chose you, he murmured. She saw you before I did. Rosa wiped her tears and whispered, I think she saw the boys. Ethan nodded. And she was right. That night, Lucas asked Rosa to join movie night. Noah asked her to sit beside him while he drew. The mansion didn't feel healed, grief doesn't vanish, but it felt honest, like air had finally reached a sealed room. And as I stood in the hallway, listening to Lucas's laughter and watching Noah's pencil move, I understood the real legacy Elena had left. Not money, not secrets, a map back to love. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever seen a system claim it's helping, while quietly taking away what matters most? And if you were Ethan, would you have had the courage to kneel, to listen, and to change? If you want more stories like this, told with heart and truth, subscribe and tell me in the comments what part of this story stayed with you the most and why.